Now, was the budget a big tick or a giant cross? Who were the winners? Who were the losers? Joining me live is University of New South Wales Professor of Economics, Gigi Foster. Thanks for coming on the program. Let's start with the cost of living. How will the budget impact the cost of living for many, do you think, Gigi?
Well, I do think the stage three tax cuts are very welcome, and that will be a helpful hit in people's pockets who have jobs and pay income tax. Of course, there's been some comment about how the job seeker rate hasn't gone up, and that's a bit of a concern in some ways. But if you think about it, we are in a very hot labor market right now. Unemployment is still very low by historical Australian standards, and people who are still unemployed in a really hot market like that often need more help than just money. They need help reintegrating into markets, finding jobs, getting ready for work, and that's an area where the government could much more profitably spend. And they have put some effort towards that. I'll just have to see how things turn out, whether that money is going to be spent in the right way. But that's actually a general comment. Instead of just handing money out, what we need is a government sometimes to think about structural changes and ways that they can change the way they're interacting with government contractors, for example, with private businesses, with individuals, to make it easier to do business, to make it easier for people to take risks, and to get the productivity slump out of the picture, or at least a bit more controlled, and just generally make people feel more confident about the future. Because at the moment, people are very uncertain, and they're worried about the bottom line in every household.
Yeah, speaking of uncertainty, Professor, what are your views on social security and welfare measures?
I did like the fact that there were some targeted measures like the Commonwealth Rent Assistance. And I'm not sure the HECS help is that good, but I liked the aged care package, and I liked seeing a few sort of targeted moves like that. But in general, it's the stage three tax cuts that will help people the most. And of course, there's this other side of things we haven't discussed, which is the energy side. The $300 rebate, some people will be saying that's wonderful because energy is, of course, something that's getting more expensive, as is everything. But it really is just a dribble in the pockets of people who are in another part of the budget subsidizing massively this ideological pursuit of the net zero transition that is getting huge amounts of government subsidies. So I don't like that because it's basically a ruse. It's basically saying, well, we're going to help you out over here on this line item, but the reason why that line item is going up so much has a lot to do with government actions in another quarter that we sort of want to keep out of sight. And I don't like that. I think that's a bit disingenuous, and I don't think it's good for Australia. I think the government should get out of the energy market as much as it is. It's certainly, there's a place for renewable energy and for electric vehicles and all this, but for the government to push this hard with this much money is just inappropriate.
Changing tack a little, better info from the US on inflation?
Yeah, a little bit. Of course, I'm also worried about the growth. So if you look at their growth figures, it's coming down a bit more than people were hoping, and they have more trouble even than we do in some parts of their labor market. They've got a lot of missing workers, a lot of sickness. So I'm not really happy about that. It's my country of birth, of course. And of course, a couple of years ago, I was worried about stagflation. At least the inflation part is coming down in the US, but it looks like we might have to be more worried about the longer term growth prospects.
You must find the political situation, I know we're going off subject slightly, looking back at the United States, a massive soap opera. It's quite extraordinary.
Oh, it's always been like that, but I have to say it's gotten worse and worse, and it's difficult to really pick the true economic policies and figure out who is standing for the most sensible economic management, because there's just so much advertising going on in politics, and that's true here as well, right?
Yeah.
Career politicians who don't represent anything but themselves.
Absolutely. Now, let's get back to Australia and what a lot of people are hanging out for. You talk to them day in, day out is, I just want these interest rates to come down. What do
Yeah.
you make of inflation in this country? And now that we've seen what we've seen the past week and a half, do you think interest rates will drop sooner rather than later?
Unfortunately, I don't. I do think that with this budget particularly, but even before the budget came down, I was not predicting rates to fall very soon. And some people were thinking, they might even go up. I thought there was a chance of that. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much really hope that that's going to happen, because there is going to be more money injected into the economy, not just with those tax cuts, but also with a lot of these other government expenditures. And so the RBA is keeping an eye on that, right? I mean, they can't control inflation perfectly, but they're going to be looking at all the different indicators of economic health and the quantity of money relative to the economic activity we have. And so there is stuff that the government could do on that latter side, instead of just thinking about money. Again, how about thinking about more broadly, what can you do to get economic activity going? That means often getting out of the way, cutting the red tape, making it easier for businesses to do what they need to do, something that makes economic sense rather than just what is ideologically appropriate from the government's perspective. So, I think that the RBA, Michelle Bullock, is very sensible. In my view, she's quite willing to do what is necessary, and I don't expect that the rates are going to come down, certainly in the near future, and maybe not for the rest of the year.
Okay, we'll watch with interest. Gigi, great to have you on the program. Love to do it again real soon.
Thank you. Thanks very much.